afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another showing of the Atheist Experience. I'm glad to be back in the seat. Last week was actually my birthday weekend, so I managed to take out some time and just take a long weekend and relax. And thank you very much for Karen and Andy for filling in for me.
And Jenny, too.
Yes, that's right. Jenny came in also. Was a good show. So, anyway, I'm your host, and I'm back, Ashley Perrian. My co-host this week,
Don Baker.
Don Baker, thank you very much. We are live today, August 22nd, and we are being sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Crescent City Beignets, which is on 6th Street, a couple blocks west of Lamar. I think it's 1211 West 6th Street. Those are very informal meetings. It starts at 11:30 and goes until usually around 1, 2 o'clock. Just us sitting around, talking, having a good time, eating beignets and crawfish. That is every Sunday, save the third Sunday of the month when we have our lecture series at
Austin's History Center.
Austin History Center. God, I was about to go back and say North Cross Mall. We used to have them there years ago. Now we have them at the Austin History Center on 9th and Guadalupe. It's one of the conference rooms in there. That starts at around 12:30. That's the third Sunday of every month. We don't have a speaker lined up for the one next month yet.
But we will.
Hopefully we will by that time. If not, it'll just be a meeting down there. We usually end up having somebody come in. So, again, that's the third Sunday starting at 12:30, Austin History Center. Other things that we do every Thursday night. Good Lord. I've only been off for 1 week, and out of touch here. Every Thursday night, we have Atheist Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex on the southbound feeder of I-35, just south of 183. That's southbound feeder of I-35, just south of 183. Sorry. That starts around 7:30 and goes again until whenever we decide to leave. That's another very informal meeting. It's the Austin History Center is the only one that we have that's a little bit more formal, and we'll have a speaker come in, we'll have specific announcements, that type of thing. Also, every other Saturday at atheistnetwork.com, we have our internet audio show, the Atheist or the Non-Prophets. That's hosted by Jeff D., produced by Russell Glasser, and the guest is, or the co-host, is Dennis Loubet. That is every other Saturday. The next one will be on the August 28th, this upcoming Saturday from today, assuming that you're watching this live on August 22nd. We also have reruns of this show every Tuesday on Channel 10 at 4:30. It's usually, I think, about a week and a half behind, so this show will probably run in about a week and a half or so from now, typically. It's not always definite, so just watch it or tape it if you get a chance, and we'll go from there. Anyway, that's pretty much all that I have for major announcements, save one. Back in January, we were actually contacted by, there's a different show that comes on Saturday mornings, the Regeneration TV show. In January, they contacted us, and I ended up going on the show and talking about, their topic was called Fatheism at the time. How is there faith in atheism and that type of thing.
This is a Christian apologetic show.
Exactly.
Just to be clear about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christian apologetic show on Channel 11. And I ended up going on that show and debating with them. Had some ups, had some downs, but ended up not being too bad. A couple weeks back, they contacted us again. I couldn't do it this time, but Don Baker took the reins. Took the reins, and the show was on atheism, or morality, atheist morality.
Right, atheism morality.
So tell us your experience from your perspective.
Got
a couple words on it later,
but it wasn't a debate. It was really kind of you know how these shows are. That everybody has their sort of point of view, and their show is about their point of view, and I think their show was trying to make the point that atheists don't quite know where their religion, their morality comes from. So that morality must come from God, and somehow tied up with our notion of conventional wisdom and our armchair reasoning, and since a lot of people believe in God, it's all connected somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of how I think they were going, but they weren't necessarily advocating their position so directly. They were, it was mostly on the hot seat, defending atheists and morality and from my perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And I did notice that they did the same thing to you that they had done with me.
Yeah?
When I was on. When I was on, right towards the end of the show, they started talking about logic and all the different forms of logic and these different logical rules and going on and on and on about that. And then right at the end, like when the music was going, he said, okay, there are these universal forms of or ideas in logic. They must have come from somewhere. We don't know where that was. It must be God. But they had gotten there from such an angle that I hadn't heard it before.
Yeah.
And so once I finally picked up that what they were doing, it was like, okay, thanks everybody for watching. See us again next week. This time they did pretty much the same thing with you.
Okay.
They brought on this entirely long tirade, trying to get you to say that morality is simply, I'm trying to
conventional wisdom.
Conventional wisdom. Everybody kind of agrees on it. Therefore, that's okay. And so, right at the end, as the music is playing, I noticed, they say, well, morality is based on conventional wisdom, which you had never agreed to. It's based on conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom says there's a God, therefore there's a God. Now, the problem with that is conventional wisdom doesn't get to dictate reality.
Right.
Morals, it's debatable. But even if everybody gets together and says, okay, we'll decide that killing's bad, or something like that. That's something you can decide. There's no universal law of physics that's being broken there. It's simply people agreeing that this is good, this is bad, that type of thing. It's debatable whether that's where ultimate morality comes from, but I could see, going with that to a certain extent. Reality is a whole different concept, though. We cannot get together and agree that this table does not exist.
That's right.
It doesn't work like that. If God exists, then that's something that's outside of anybody's reasoning, it's outside of logic, it's outside of what we all agree on or not. He either does or he doesn't. Now, we can argue about that because we don't know for a fact.
Examine the evidence, that sort
But
of
at
thing.
the end of the day, his existence is not up for debate. He either does or does not.
That's right.
So
I think I got a little jab in at the very
different.
end and said that a lot of people believed at one time that the Earth was flat. That didn't make the Earth flat. But
exactly.
I had
the
a
same.
very, very quick little jab.
Yeah. But I must say, it was good of you to take it out. Good to go on.
It was a challenge, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. And you did get a lot of good jabs. There were a lot of good points that you made. On their website, they list atheism, I think, as
a faith. Yeah.
A faith. The belief that there is no God type thing. I don't know if that is actually on the website.
I don't think they expanded on it. They just said the great faith of atheism. I think the phrase they used. So it wasn't real clear what they really meant by that.
And right at the beginning, you called them on that one, which was good. You called them on the different forms of atheism, which was good. Saying that they were trying to say atheism is this huge, complex philosophy, and there are so many different ideas and so many different points of view. And it's nice that you kept bringing it back home, saying, no, it's just lack of belief in a God. That's it. That's all.
You can build on that and go lots of different directions, but atheism itself is a very simple...
Exactly. There's hard and soft atheism. You can take lots of different positions as to why you're an atheist. The problem of evil, for one. I'm an atheist because of the problem of evil. Versus, I haven't seen any evidence, therefore I'm an atheist. There are lots of different arguments you can take to get to your atheism, but it's still simply and corely a lack of belief in a God. Period. That's it. And so it's not as complicated as they wanted to make it out to be.
Right.
But the show in general was about morality.
Right.
So that kind of bumped it up on our roster.
Right, it's a pretty important topic. I mean, I think it's great that they brought it up, and I think so. So I took the opportunity, since I was going to be on the day after, to use the same topic. That way, I get to prepare only once, and sort of I sort of didn't get to really say what I thought on their show, I had to respond to their questions,
Yeah.
which is fine. It's their show.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to kind of turn it around a little bit and say what we think and such, and Ashley can kind of disagree with me.
If I have anything to say, I will say it.
Certainly. So and this whole issue of morality is actually a tough question. I think atheists get asked this all the time because Christianity comes with this supposed absolute morality, the Ten Commandments, and all this stuff, and God gives it to you, right? So, but where do atheists decide what's right and wrong? How do they do that? And I think it's a perfectly valid question, very interesting question, and the sort of deeper question is where do those values come from? Where do they come from? If they're not coming from God, are you making them up? That sort of thing. So these are fine questions. I think the purpose or let's see if we can define morality first. It's one definition is principles to govern our behavior, deciding right from wrong, which begs the question of what's right and what's wrong. Another definition I like is a framework for trade-offs between competing human interests. And I think that this kind of gets to this idea that morality is really about humanity and humans making decisions that affect other humans. And when you start getting beyond that, humans making decisions that affect ants, we're not really talking about morality anymore. We're talking about maybe bioethics or some broader thing or some different thing. Okay. So it's really sort of inward looking in many ways. And I think the real purpose of morality is to maximize human potential. I think that's really what the purpose is, right? We want to get ourselves to the future in such a way where people can sort of be themselves and can achieve the most, not harm each other. So that's kind of where we're coming from, I think, on this morality question. There's this notion of, okay, well, we have these moral codes, right? We have the Ten Commandments from the Bible and such, and wouldn't it be really nice if we had this God giving us this absolute moral code, this absolute morality, and we can just sort of follow this code, follow the rules, and everything's just hunky-dory, and potentially reason might be able to give you such a thing. I'm not sure. I'll debate that a little later on, but is there such a thing as absolute morality? And if you flip that around, then you get into this question or this problem of moral relativism, and that one group of people go for one moral code, another group of people go for another moral code, and then you have all sorts of problems because of that, right? Because competing interests and that sort of thing, and maybe more moral relativism means that everybody gets to make their own decisions about morality, and I think that that's not true. I think there are common moral principles or universal moral principles, and this was noticed by C.S. Lewis, who is a famous Christian apologist, and he referred to these common principles as the law of human nature. And he used this in an argument to say that, okay, well, these universal things exist, like empathy for other humans and not killing, prescriptions for not killing are very universal. And he used this as an idea to prove that God must exist. These things must come from God. Certainly, they're not the whims of humans, right? They're not made up from out of the air. So there's something deeper there, right? So that part I agree with. I'm not sure. You'd have to prove to me that they come from God. So I think that they do come from somewhere, and they come from our human nature, and our human nature is dictated in part by our DNA and in part by our culture. So that's really where they come from. So, but if you say that if somebody comes to you and says, well, we have this absolute morality, I have yet to see such an animal. I think it's a fictitious notion, this absolute morality. I don't think there is such a thing. So if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, well, our religion has this thing, then, one of the questions that I raised on the show yesterday was, is it written down? Where is it? Can you point at it? And if you can't, you know, if you can't have this objective thing that I can hand to you, Ashley, and let you read and look at, then how can we say it's an absolute thing? If it's fictional, or if it doesn't exist, or you have to be in some sort of meditative state in order to get it, or whatever, right? So you know,
I don't know if there can be any kind of absolute morality. Morality is definitely a relative thing. What is good in a particular situation? Saying it's like killing is bad, killing is immoral. What about war? What about the death sentence? What about people who are terminally ill and they have 3 weeks to live and they're in, you know, massive amounts of pain? Is that really morally wrong to kill them? Not necessarily. I wouldn't think so. Now, you can define situations where killing is bad. Killing innocent children is bad. But there you're defining a pretty narrow set of circumstances. Killing them with no reason, young children, that's basically a situation where, yes, I could say that I could view that specific situation is wrong. But they want to often make it so broad where killing is bad. Not necessarily. You can find specific instances, situations where killing is good and bad. So yeah, it's definitely a situational thing. You can pretty much anything, if you get it broad enough, you could find a time.
Right. Not that we're advocating killing.
Of course.
But there's a a notion of personal responsibility, and maybe you've done something so bad that the laws and such demand that society take that person's life.
Exactly.
That might be an example where it's justified.
And again, and going back to that,
certainly
just
self-defense,
one as a
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
right.
self-defense. But as a side note, capital punishment or something like that, I haven't made up my mind on that one. I don't want to turn this into that
the verdict
show.
is still out in my mind as well.
That we're not talking about, but.
Okay, so we have the potential for having a moral code, and I think the important thing to notice here is that moral codes are based on certain beliefs. That you sort of choose some beliefs and you say, well, from these beliefs we come up with this moral code, and if you ascribe to these beliefs, then this moral code applies to you. And I think that you can understand the Christian moral code or the Jewish moral code in that respect. That if you really do believe that there is a God and all the things the Bible's true and so on, then you can start to buy into the moral code therein, right?
Yeah.
That God really did say these things, right? It's important, I think, that if you do this, to list what those beliefs are, right? You have to sort of advertise them. You have to say, well, we believe this, this, and this, and this gets into one of my little pet peeves. We talk about atheism as whether or not God exists, but there's all sorts of wild claims made about God beyond just his existence, right? There's this notion that God is self-creating, right? Which is another big leap beyond God exists, right?
Yeah.
Or there's only one God, and there's only has been one God, and he's eternal. That's another big leap. And there's a huge number of these things that are part of Christianity.
Yeah.
Huge number. And so it's not enough to just list one or two. The existence of God doesn't make Christianity true, right? It makes it slightly more plausible, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do that. So and once you start listing all these beliefs, well, then the more beliefs you have, the more debate you can have about whether or not those beliefs are true. I mean, some people might believe them, some people might not. Some people might have evidence that this is false, and so on. And you start narrowing the scope. You start the number of people that believe in those beliefs starts to be limited. And I think that we can't apply a moral code that's based on one set of beliefs to people who don't believe that. I think that makes no sense, right? So maybe the Hindus have a moral code that's created by multiple gods, and that's surely better than one that's created by a single god, because two heads are better than one, or whatever, right? So just on the surface, that's got to be a better moral code. But of course, Christians wouldn't accept that, right? Because their God doesn't exist, that sort of thing. They're different beliefs.
Yeah.
So And then if you have lots and lots of beliefs and these beliefs start to contradict each other or they conflict with reality, then you've got a problem, right? Because then you lose the so-called soundness property, where if you have a logical system and you add axioms and you start adding too many axioms, pretty soon you can prove anything you want with this logical system. There's a very similar thing here with beliefs, that if you start having conflicting beliefs, then, well, maybe one belief tells you to do one thing, another belief tells you to do another thing, and you have, it's nuts. It breaks down. So, in a sense, beliefs are a liability, in my opinion. And so the goal, I think, is to create a moral code with as few beliefs as possible, or explore different moral codes vis-a-vis their beliefs, or the beliefs that give rise to them. And there is a moral code created by a humanist, secular humanist, called the Secular Humanist Manifesto, that tries to do that. It tries to come up with a whole number of moral principles based on as few beliefs as possible. And part of that is sort of an understanding, and it also has to be based on reality and human nature and reason. I think that if you abandon any of those things, you're going to end up with a goofy moral code, right? I think so. So the secular humanism thing is based on humans creating their own moral code, and we have to admit, we have to realize that humans are fallible. So we might make mistakes, and so we have to have a moral code that is amenable to be adjusted and fixed, and with a later perspective, when we learn more, our knowledge of the world is increasing and evolving, and we are evolving. So our moral code has to evolve too. So in a sense, there is no absolute morality, but I think that secular humanism, the Secular Humanist Manifesto, is a very good attempt, and I think it's going to be the closest thing to absolute morality, although it's not absolute in the sense that it's potentially flawed.
Does it give any instances of saying this behavior good, this behavior bad?
It's not like a commandment sort of thing. It's more of a values and such. What we can do is I can read a little bit about what it's about. This is kind of a summary of it. Secular humanism is a term which has come to use in the last 30 years to describe a worldview with the following elements and principles: a conviction that dogmas, ideologies, traditions, whether religious, political, or social, must be weighed and tested by each individual and not simply accepted on faith. So this is the whole reason, examine things in the light of reason. Okay. That commitment to use of critical reason, factual evidence, and scientific methods of inquiry rather than faith and mysticism in seeking solutions to human problems and answers to important questions. Okay. So we buy into that definitely, since we're atheists. A primary concern with fulfillment, growth, and creativity for both the individual and humankind in general. So this is achieving human potential both as individuals and... Okay. A consistent search for objective truth with the understanding that new knowledge and experience constantly alter our imperfect perception of it. So this is this evolving knowledge idea. We don't know everything now. We might know more in the future. A concern for this life and a commitment to making it meaningful through better understanding of ourselves and our history, our intellectual and artistic achievements, and the outlooks of those who differ from us. Two more here. A search for viable individual social and political principles of ethical conduct, judging them on their ability to enhance human well-being and individual responsibility. So personal responsibility is a big one. So we get some themes here, but not commandments.
Yeah.
Okay. A conviction that with reason, an open marketplace of ideas, goodwill, and tolerance, progress can be made in building a better world for ourselves and our children.
Okay. All right.
So this is a little capsule sort of summary of what secular humanism's about.
It kind of tilts it more of this is a process of gaining knowledge.
Yeah.
Versus...
Yeah. It's much like the scientific method,
which is what morality has to be. It's a search for the best way to handle any given situation. There is no commandment that you can finally arrive at, I can imagine, where you could say, in this situation, this behavior is always bad. Or this behavior is always good. I don't think you can do that unless you want to start getting down to a laundry list of tiny little details, in which case, okay, fine, your commandments are now 156,000. But I don't see any point in doing that. It's a process. It's looking at a situation and saying, what is the right thing to do given the circumstances that we're in right now? What should we be doing?
Right.
It's always a search. So.
That's right. That's right. And you know, if you care about these sorts of questions, I'm sure they would invite your input on this. So it's a living document, a living thing that welcomes different viewpoints and different contributions. So so that's a very nice thing to be able to sort of contribute to this moral system. So you know, one of the ways you can judge a moral system is based on, you know, the consequences or what people do when they believe these things, right? Because beliefs invite action or dictate action and such. So one of the things you can do is to see whether a belief is good or bad is to sort of explore what are the implications of that belief and whether that's good or bad for mankind in general. So you know, if you believe that the Bible is true, and you go take a look at what, you know, who this God character is in the Bible, you know, you find out he's pretty reprehensible kind of guy. Yeah. You know, always murdering, and his most common interaction with man seems to be murdering man rather than having conversations or whatever. You know, just the Noah's Ark story. I don't know how many people got wiped out there, right? Christians love to, you know, sell that as a little story about these cute furry animals taking a boat ride, but it's really about it's really about the death, the willful death, the cause of death of a huge number of people and a huge number of animals on the planet.
Furry animals taking a boat ride. I like that.
It gets
the cute fuzzy bunnies on a raft.
Right. Let's go for
a trip.
Right. That's right. So, so you know, and then you want to take moral principles from this God. You know, it's kind of like, you know, getting recipes from Jeffrey Dahmer or something. makes you wonder, you know, whether you really want to do that. So if you explore this belief that the Bible's true, then you have to question whether or not the morality coming from there is good. If you believe that God is all-powerful and does what He wants, then if suffering is God's will, who are we to counter it? And this is something that Epicurus said in 300 BC. You know, this is before Christianity. So this is so you know, we have this hurricane that came through, right?
Yes.
We have this hurricane, and people love when there's big weather phenomena. They love to say, is God's saying this or saying that? And you know, it's pretty clear to me that God is saying, well, we need to wipe out some of this stuff. So who are we to go help these people, right? We're going to get on God's bad side if we kind of run counter to what He says, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we should go kill off the rest of them. Do you want to hit this news story?
Yeah, I can hit it just really quickly. It's just a little snippet, basically. It was a longer story, but the main thing is a quick point. But yeah, this is about the Hurricane Charlie, which was going on in Florida. I'll just give a quick summary here of, again, this was a pretty major hurricane. Raced up the Atlantic seaboard Saturday, leaving a trail of demolished homes, flooded streets, and uprooted trees, forcing thousands from their homes and killing at least 13 people. In Florida, where 145-mile-per-hour winds flattened trailer parks and tore roofs off hospitals and office buildings, emergency officials described the storm as the worst since Hurricane Andrew, which caused a record $26 billion in damage when it smashed through the southern part of the state in '92. At least 3 cities were without running water and 2 million homes were without power. So this is a really bad hurricane. President Bush declared Florida a federal disaster area, and federal authorities sent a mortuary team to assist with the dead.
Oh, that's sad.
Now, Florida Governor Jeb Bush surveyed the devastation by helicopter, and one of his quotes was, "This is God's way of telling us that He's almighty and we're mortal." So apparently, God is up there in heaven saying, y'all are getting a bit too uppity for my taste, and just smearing out Central Florida. How you can possibly think that you're going to get your moral rules from that being is...
Yeah, it seems to be a popular sport to interpret weather phenomena as the opinions of God.
I know
Pat Robertson does that all the time.
Yeah, Pat Robertson. Yeah, every time there's anything, any kind of swell in the ocean, it was prophesied in Revelations.
Right, or it's God's comment on conservative Christian politics. It's one or the other. So if you believe that God is really powerful and has all this control, then what are you to make of a natural disaster like that? He must have meant to do it. It certainly took some effort on his part to kick up all that wind and water, right?
Yeah. Or at least he didn't do anything to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just one of those things where it kind of got started on its own, mm-hmm. And he didn't directly cause it.
Absolutely.
He certainly could have stopped it without any effort.
Absolutely, and it's hard to imagine how that has benefits mankind, right? Yeah. This problem of evil.
God somehow saw it fit to kill at least 13 people.
Yeah, yeah.
With 190 miles.
So what about another set of beliefs? How about this soul and afterlife and eternal judgment? I personally think that this is the source of more suffering than any other belief ever concocted by mankind. Okay, so this idea that you have a soul that lives in the afterlife, and God is going to just make this sort of binary decision as to whether you go to heaven or hell, and there's this huge reward or this huge penalty based on that decision, and you don't quite know how he's going to make that decision. I mean, it's not crystal clear, so you're left to wonder, and so. And this whole infinite reward thing, or this bliss throughout eternity, it ends up being an infinite reward or an infinite punishment, being in hell, ends up sort of skewing all of the calculations that we might do as far as cost-benefit analysis, right? If you think you're going to go to heaven, I mean, what's the trade-off for doing the will of God in order to make Him happy? So the idea is that a believer is likely to sell out his fellow man in order to curry favor with God. And we see that in the Old Testament, even though the Jews don't believe in an afterlife per se, they did believe that God is powerful and could smite them or whatever that means. We have God, we have Abraham, we have God telling Abraham to kill his son. And he was, all set to do that. The fact that he didn't kill his son is kind of a secondary issue, right? He wasn't there. We weren't celebrating him because he deceived God, right? We're celebrating him because he obeyed God, but God didn't end up allowing him to kill his son in the end. Yeah. So in the 3rd chapter of Romans, Paul offers an astounding justification of falsehood. For if the truth of God hath more abounded through my lie unto his glory, why yet am I also judged as a sinner? So he's basically saying, if you can lie for God, that's not bad. And Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, said much the same thing. What harm would it do if a man told a good, strong lie for the sake of good and for the Christian church? A lie out of necessity, a useful lie, a helpful lie. Such lies would not be against God. He would accept them. Okay? So
if you have to lie to people to get them to accept your position is weak.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So these are excellent examples of selling out your fellow man by lying to him in order to curry favor with God. Because you're getting to heaven is much more of a motivation than this lying commandment. And if God likes that, who can argue, right? So we see this throughout. I mean, we have all these myths and forgeries on the lying thing. We have holy wars and so on. I think that this very fundamental belief in the soul and the afterlife and this huge reward is a source of a great deal of human misery, and that alone should make you just wonder whether you should buy into this belief or not. So. I want to make a couple other points, and then we can take some callers. You want to put up the number? We're a live call-in show. You want to give that? Yep.
As I said, we are a live call-in show. Today is August 22nd on Sunday. Like I say, this is the Atheist Experience talking about morality today. If you have any questions or comments, either on morality topic or just for us in general, phone number will be up on your screen momentarily. Go ahead and give us a call, and we'll get to you in a couple of minutes.
Okay, there it is.
There it is.
There it is. So another way to take a look at a set of moral principles is how they respond to moral problems. And by far the biggest moral problem many people have said in the world today is overpopulation of the planet. We have sort of an exponential growth of the number of people, yeah. And we have finite resources on the planet. I mean, to some extent we can mitigate that with brain power, more efficient, crops and yeah. Nuclear power, perhaps. There's a number of things we can do to kind of forestall that, but
eventually Malthus will kick in. Yeah,
eventually, something's got to give, right? So humanists are very concerned about this problem. By the way, we can go into that. But the Christian solution to this seems to be variations on the theme of "go forth and multiply." We have family planning being vilified, condom use, misinformation. I did a show last time about the condom misinformation. We have women being treated as baby factories, condemnation of homosexuality. This is a very, very big theme that they want to make more Christians. And it's clear how the religion benefits by that, right? The more believers you have, the more that can go fight holy wars and kill off the people who don't believe in your religion or whatever, right? You can do this mob rule sort of thing where you overwhelm a particular situation just by sheer numbers. You win. So another big one is the environment. It's kind of related. How do we take care of the environment? And we have this rapture thing that says basically we're in it for this orgasm of having Jesus come, and to hell with the rest of the planet, because we're only here to wipe our feet and be saved by Jesus returning, and that's going to happen in the next time, in the next few years or whatever. We have a large number of people, something like 15%, who are voting in the next election based on who is going to bring rapture. And that's very scary. Yeah. We have a sabotage of education in many cases. We have active destruction of science, especially in areas where it conflicts with the religions and such. So anyway, I'm going to just kind of maybe stop there and say that you have to sort of look at the consequences of these different belief systems and say, is this really the right way to go? And I think you can make an objective decision that in some cases beliefs cause suffering, they cause harm, and you can infer that those beliefs are bad because of that.
Yeah. Well, they try and offer some kind of basis for morality. They try and simplify it to a certain degree, which to a certain extent is a good thing to do if you can simplify down your beliefs. Mm-hmm. Just that they're easier to understand and easier to follow. That can be a good thing. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is that it is a process. It is something that's difficult. It's not at all easy. And so we have to figure out this process. And unfortunately, people don't like thinking. In general, a lot of people just don't care for thinking. They want to be given rules. Mm-hmm. Killing bad. Treating people well, good. Mm-hmm. They just want to have these. And
I suppose we could take secular humanism and boil it down to five simple rules or whatever.
I'm sure you could 5 or 10 simple principles or routes to go on or something like that would kind of make it easier. But
I have a set of
that isn't something I've prepared for yet for the show. So.
That's okay. Somewhere here there's this guy named Salon. Oh, by the way, we're a live call-in show. Please give us a call if you have any questions or comments. It can be about the topic today, or it can be about anything having to do with atheism.
Any questions you got? Right.
So feel free to call in. We have this 10 Commandments, but we also have this guy who was in Greece. His name is Salon, and he, I might be mispronouncing his name. He was born around 638 BCE, so quite a long time before Christ and such. and roughly about the same time as Moses is supposed to have lived. He has really influenced Western thought quite a bit. He created the first constitution for Greece that was sort of made Greece a sort of basically a secular state. Instead of being a king's and a king's whims, he said, well, we got to have this thing that sort of transcends that. And so he created a constitution for Greece, and many of the concepts from that were borrowed into our Constitution in the United States and such. But he had a set of rules, his own 10 Commandments, which is kind of a simplified, if you will, moral philosophy, and I think it's a really good one. I think it's worth looking at and admiring that someone could come up with this. And the 10 are, one is trust good character more than promises. You know, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It kind of tells you a lot about how to deal with people.
Yeah.
Do not speak falsely, so don't lie.
Okay. Do
good things. So a whole bunch of different commandments from the 10 Commandments gets kind of condensed into that. Here's a good one. Do not be hasty in making friends, but do not abandon them once made. You know, is there anything in the Bible about friendship? What a wonderful, you know, social glue thing friendship is, and how important that is. And the Bible more or less ignores it.
As Jesus said, you must hate your family if you want to join me.
Right.
I don't know the exact quote, but it was along those lines.
Right. Abandon your family and follow me because they're not going to give you eternal life.
Yeah.
Learn to obey before you command. That's another good one for you know, social interactions, that sometimes there are leaders and sometimes there are followers. And it helps to be a good follower before you learn how to be a good leader. When giving advice, do not recommend what is most pleasing, but what is most useful. That seems pretty decent. Make reason your supreme commander. So he liked reason too. We atheists are just really gung-ho about reason. Do not associate with people that do bad things. You know, watch the crowd you hang out with. I think that's great advice. Honor the gods. Now, this is you know, the only secular one, and you know, you could spin that as you know, be tolerant of other people's faith.
But we don't need to start interpreting his words.
Right.
In terms of honor the gods, he's not perfect. Scratch that one.
Right.
So now we're down to nothing.
The last one is have regard for your parents, which is not, you know, blindly obey your parents, but you know, listen to them because they have some good advice. Yeah. So we could quibble about number 9, but gosh, the others are just really just dead on. And
again,
these were
in a lot of situations, though, those are decent ideas to follow. But it's certainly not the kind of things where you codify these and say, okay, here are these 9, 10, or whatever commandments that you stick by.
Right.
Because have regard for your parents. Well, regard them, yes, but if they abused you, to hell with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
Given the specific situation, you know, your parents may not be worthy of your respect.
Right. So
usually they do.
Use reason as your supreme
Usually
commander.
our views are, you know, it was my parents, you know, I couldn't stand it when they made me go to summer camp that time. But again, that's a short-term view. But so, I'm more interested. I mean, we consider ourselves moral or ethical. We have this idea that, you know, actions have consequences, reason through the situation.
Personal responsibility.
Find out what is the best way to overcome the situation. What's the best thing to do in these specific circumstances? Christianity doesn't really seem to have that as much, though, from what I can determine. Now, a lot of them will say that, yes, you do have to be a good person and all these kind of things. But the Bible basically teaches that it's through faith alone. As long as you believe, that's all it takes. And this is one of the big problems that I had with Christianity specifically, is I always had the thought in my head that, okay,
you get this huge reward and you don't have to do very much.
Well, partly that, but I'm thinking, okay, here's the two extremes in that argument. I'm an atheist, meaning I'm going to hell according to the Bible. I'm not going to get this vast eternal reward. I walk out of the studio. There's a school bus on fire with 30 kids in it. I go running in there and I bust open the doors and I save their lives, but oops, I get caught and I die.
That's right.
I deserve to go to hell.
I have
done I'm not perfect. I'll admit that.
Yep.
But I don't think I've done anything so bad that I deserve hell. You know, I'm not that bad. Now, on the other extreme, you've got people who've gone to prison. You know, they've done 35 murders in their lives. You know, they've gutted people and they've gone to prison. They don't care. They hate everybody.
Right.
As they're getting the injection, they say, "Oh my God, I was wrong. Jesus, I believe. Take me. You know, I am yours. I'm so sorry for what I did." He gets to go to heaven. Is this really a good and fair and just system? And I don't think it is.
Yeah, it bothers me. It bothers my sensibilities.
Yeah, the fact that you can have belief, therefore you have more or less a blank check, morally speaking, to do whatever you want. As long as you're sorry about it after, and truly sorry, which I grant, truly sorry and you believe, then you're okay. I don't think that's enough. So, sorry is definitely a component, but that's not all there is to it. Anyway, let's go on to a couple callers. Again, numbers on your screen. We are live today on August 22nd. Go ahead and give us a call, and we'll get you on the air. First off, we have Chris. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Okay.
One quick question. You guys are very big on using reason to validate things.
Okay.
I was just curious, how can the claim that reason is very, very valuable to form your beliefs be validated by reason without using circularity, which is not reasonable?
Yeah. You want to take that? I'd be glad to.
Reason is based on observation. You can make observations of the world and see what certain behaviors do, what certain actions do. And then you can reason from them that, these things tend to help people, these things tend to hurt people. And so you can make observations based on things and decide then what's the best thing to do.
So,
I don't know if that answers it or not.
So reason is based on our experience, right? We reason about things. We sort of predict what might happen. We reason things out, and then we watch what happens in the real world, and that gives us confidence that reason is the way to go. So reason is based ultimately on experience.
Yeah. Using logic, you can prove that George Washington was a Winnebago. Logic has certain good things behind it. Reason has certain good things, but there's more to life than that. There's observation to back it up too.
Okay. I guess the same thing goes with observation. If it's about evidence assessment, for instance, if beliefs should only be the ones that can be supported by evidence, that's a claim. Beliefs should only be supported by evidence. How can that claim actually be supported by evidence?
Well,
do you follow me?
That's
are you
a
familiar with
principle.
logical positivism?
okay.
It's not a principle. That's a principle, though.
Yes, and it's a principle that you guys use.
Well, I'm saying it's okay to have beliefs. I think what I'm saying is it's okay. It's good to sort of list what they are and at least sort of be aware of the fact that you have beliefs. We believe our senses are not deceiving us, right? We have this deep faith that reality. There's an objective reality that Ashley and I and you share, and it's something that we have to take on faith, that we're not in some sort of matrix-style simulation where the rules of the world or the rules of reality are dictated by something other than reality itself. So there is a faith there and a belief there, and I'm willing to admit that. But my point is, one thing to say here is that if you have that if you don't accept that belief, then you can't really go anywhere. You have nothing to grab onto. So we have to trust our senses, and if we don't trust our senses, then we're in really bad shape. We can't go anywhere with reason or anything.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I'm a bit confused as to the circularity of it, though. Just overcoming the idea that you can argue and debate things and finesse things into corners.
Yeah, it's the question of where does reason come from?
Yeah, it's looking at the world and saying, let's sit down in the real world and decide what's going on, rather than debating it. Let's find out what's actually happening. Anyway, we got more callers. We can go on to David. How you doing?
How you doing?
Yeah, pretty well. What you got for us?
Well, I don't really have any debate. I was just kind of wondering exactly where you stand on the basic possibility of God.
The
Provide us
possible
evidence.
existence of it, of God, I assume you mean?
I'm sorry?
The existence of God, possible?
The existence of the possible existence of God.
Okay. Atheism is basically a lack of belief in a God. At this point, I have seen no evidence presented for the existence of God. There's speculation and there's bad arguments, in my opinion, for his existence, but I haven't seen anyone come down and say, here's a specific piece of evidence that we have that can only be explained by God. I haven't seen anything like that. And also, given most definitions of God, there are serious moral, philosophical, logical objections that I have to the concept of that being existing and being worth anything, even, respect, let alone worship. So no evidence, and I've got a lot of questions. If he does come stomping around one day, I've got a lot of questions for him. So.
Okay, well, go ahead, Leslie.
I don't know if you had anything, Don?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this all depends a lot on what you mean by God. If you want to take the deist opinion that God is the creator of the universe and nothing else, that He is no longer sort of around and interacting with us, that's pretty hard to disprove. Or pretty, I'm kind of ambivalent to that. If you want to say that God is, this problem of evil, if God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, then those things contradict our view, our seeing that there's suffering in the world. This problem of evil is what this is called, and we think that basically is an impossibility, that a God cannot have those three traits. And then it begs the question of, well, if a God doesn't have those three traits, why would you want to worship Him? So the more attributes you ascribe to God, the more unlikely it is, in my opinion.
Do you believe that you are where you are today based on your own free will?
Elbow grease?
That there's on your own merits. That you're not somewhere else doing something else.
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Well, I mean,
I don't think there's any specific purpose or reason or plan that put me here. The fact that I am exactly who I am, sitting exactly where I'm at, I think is, I hate to use the word, accident or chance, but it's the fact that things happened to where my parents got together and decided to have me, and the events in their life and my life, got me here. I don't think there's some kind of vast eternal plan that I'm fulfilling, or that I'm destined to be in Detroit in 2008. I don't think there's any kind of plan like that. I think it is just
I would agree with that.
Science.
Yeah.
So there's no real purpose to life.
There's definitely a purpose. The purpose is not written down in some grand book somewhere of life in general or mine specifically, but my life definitely has purpose and meaning to me and to the people that I'm close to. Life gets its meaning because we give it meaning. I have important things in my life, the meaningful things to me. I like my work. I like the ACA. I've got great friends through it. I love doing this TV show. Great friends outside of that, my family. All that gives my life meaning. It's not something that's written down in a book somewhere, but it's important to me.
Well, what about general spiritual axioms like the Golden Rule, things of that nature?
Some of them are pretty good ideas, but do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Again, it's a decent principle for most situations, but it breaks down at times. So.
Can you give me an example?
I love this debating, arguing about religion. It's fun. But I'm not going to go, if my grandparents or something are highly religious, you know, I'm not going to go into them and just start debating and hammering away on their you know, proofs of God or whatever as hard as I can, because it's not the right thing to do. I may enjoy it if some, you know, heavy-duty Christian comes up to me and starts saying, you know, you're wrong, and here's all the reason, and here's the evidence of God. I would like for them to do that to me, but I'm not going to do it to other people because I know that they may not appreciate it. I'll skip out.
Yeah, so actually saying that you might temper your knowledge of those people based on, it's not do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, but do unto others as you think that they would want done unto them, sort of thing.
Perhaps.
So I would give a slightly different answer. I think that there are some sort of moral things, moral principles or whatever that are sort of dictated by human nature. The fact that we are alive, that we are, you know, living creatures, basically means that we value life, and it's because DNA, as a species, we wouldn't be successful if we didn't value life. You know, if we were out there killing each other, then we would be less successful as a species, and we would die out. So in a sense, the fact that we're alive gives us value for life. The fact that we are social animals, like a lot of apes, means that we have a social structure, and we have adapted ways of dealing in that social structure, and there are genetic advantages for having that social structure, cooperation and such. And so there's a notion of fairness, there's a notion of you know, a pecking order, those sorts of things are all come out of our sort of genetic nature. So some of these things are that may seem God-given or whatever are really a result of our DNA and our evolutionary process. And you might disagree with some of the points I'd made. Mm. We had a little discussion about that ahead of time.
Yeah.
You want to say anything more about that?
Did you have any other questions for us at all?
No, not really. I was just kind of calling, really, just to see if I could get on the show.
Congratulations!
You were real. You made it, man.
All right, man. Take it easy, guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for calling. All right. Nothing specifically. Mostly it was just the explanation that you had that morality is genetic, has genetic composition, which it does.
It's an oversimplification, right?
Exactly.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, we got on the subject on the regeneration TV, and I don't think I really gave it justice.
And I think the main point being that we have logical reasons why, in general, killing people is bad. In general, stealing things is bad. But there are logical reasons why these things are bad, and there are observational reasons why they hurt people. Mm-hmm. Therefore, people who have a predisposition to not do that have a slight benefit in society. They get a little bit farther. So their genes are very slightly favored. Mm-hmm. Whereas someone who is predisposed to murder and kill and steal and everything like that,
right. And
it's going to work
the
against
genes,
them to a certain
I think,
extent,
play out in the form of sort of the wiring of our brain and our sort of visceral response to various things, right? We have a strong survival instinct. No one would debate that. Yeah. And we actually have sort of this emotional response, I think, in many cases where the ethics and morality goes awry. Where, you know, if somebody is torturing somebody else, I feel so much empathy for that person that I feel sick and I feel pain myself. There's this really wonderful article I recommend checking out for our listeners. This is in Discover magazine, April 2004, so pretty recent. A guy by the name of Carl Zimmer wrote an article called "Whose Life Would You Save?" And it's about a researcher who is taking a look at doing brain scans, these MRI scans of people. And when these people are in this machine, which is a harmless machine to the people, they're posing all sorts of moral dilemmas to these people to try to ferret out what sorts of neural pathways are activated during them reasoning about it. And it's a very fascinating article. There are situations where our sort of primitive brain, which has this hardwiring that we've talked about, is somewhat at odds with our reasoning capability, and those are the really tough ones where you really are hemming and hawing as to how to resolve a particular moral dilemma. Yeah. And anyhow, this is really wonderful research, and I highly recommend this article.
Doesn't even need to be all that tough of a decision. Somebody cut you off in traffic.
You just get out the gun and blow
frickin'
away.
kill him. But then reason takes
really
over,
mean-
and you
we
say,
don't really
"Okay,
mean that.
fine, I'll move over and put your blinger on."
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, I'm gonna frickin' kill him. Anyway, we have got Matt. How you doing?
Well, hello.
Okay,
How's it going?
pretty good. What you got
I've
for us?
got several questions, but they're not too much important. How do you feel about prayer in school?
I don't agree that there should be any kind of specific prayers being led by the school officials. Now, this is in public school, of course. You know, private schools, religious schools, they can do more or less whatever they want in that regard. If you're going to a state-sponsored church or state-sponsored school, you should not have the teacher getting up there and leading a prayer. Now, if a kid in study hall or before classes start, after class, or something
Before
like
a
that,
test.
wants to pray, go for it. Knock yourself out.
Okay, what is the Pledge of Allegiance, really?
What is what? I'm sorry?
The Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Is
It's
it a
it's a
prayer?
loyalty oath to the United States, and it also has a little bit of, recently it has a little bit of God stuff in there, a little
Yeah.
bit of, so we
I
think that that's basically a prayer, and the government sort of, you know, by having students do the Pledge of Allegiance is
Yeah.
basically, you know, a violation of church-state separation.
It is a violation, but I wouldn't position it so much as a prayer. I have a problem with the pledge for two reasons. One, I don't like the under God in there. And two, I don't think that kids that young really understand what the Pledge of Allegiance is actually saying. If once you've
Yes, a
studied
very
it,
deep promise, very deep
Exactly.
sort of thing, and
exactly,
it's-
and to be up there when you're 6 years old, being forced to say this, I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, after you've studied, you know, American history, and you know what this pledge is saying, and you know about that kind of thing, then if you want to say it, great, go for it. But I don't think making kids recite this is a good thing.
Okay, how about money issue? Like, and I forgot, I think it's on a dollar bill, "In God We Trust."
Yeah, yeah.
So what you feel about that?
Again, I'd like to see it taken off. I'm not going to, you know, lose any sleep at night over it. But
It spins, you know?
it what?
It spins. Everybody spends it like money, so I really don't have a problem with it either.
Yeah. Again, it's not something I'm going to lose any sleep over. But given my druthers, I'd say take it off.
I think it's less pernicious than the school prayer thing.
Yeah. You can opt out of spending money.
Right.
Plastic.
By and large, it's adults that
And,
that are spending the money. So,
Yeah. And have you heard of a guy named Louis Myers? Sir?
Louis Myers.
Sounds
Yeah.
vaguely familiar, but no, I'm not sure.
With the Austin Music Network, they're trying to take over your station. Did y'all know that? They're trying to put you on channel 16.
Oh, the new ACTV rules.
Yeah.
We've heard a little bit about that. Don't know all the details. We've currently have our producer. They're
Yeah,
kind of
we're
looking
following
into it. So yeah, we're looking into it.
Thank you for the heads
So,
up, though.
but yeah,
we're
yeah.
following it.
So, all right.
Gosh, Satan must have jumped in that guy and taken over. I don't know what that was.
Let's go on to, let's see. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not too bad. What you got for us?
I was wondering, do you believe in evolution? Do you believe you came from a monkey?
Not exactly came from
Well,
a monkey. No,
Where do you think you came from?
that's a vast oversimplification.
Do you believe in evolution?
Yeah. Well,
Yes or no?
We buy
Let
into all
us-
the evidence for evolution.
let us answer the question. Current
I'm trying.
evidence points to evolution as the best explanation of why life is here.
Okay, can I ask you this?
Okay.
Do you think a cat came from a dog?
No, but evolution doesn't say that either.
But you believe a man came from a monkey?
No.
Well, you said you believe in evolution.
Yes, but evolution never said about man coming.
You're
Okay,
We don't
man
believe,
never said, evolution never said that man came from monkeys or dogs came from cats or an amoeba gave birth to a mouse. Evolution says nothing of the sort. So evolution says all life came from earlier, previous, simpler forms. That's something that the evidence points to, and I would agree with. So, yes, John.
Did you go to elementary school?
Yes, I did.
What did they teach you in that book?
Which book?
It's a science
See
book.
Spot run, see Jane run.
No, you know what I'm talking about.
Actually, no, I don't. What is?
That didn't teach you you revolved from an ape.
No, it didn't.
I don't believe.
Or if it was a vast oversimplification, which is on the
yeah,
border of
but
being
hey,
wrong.
how much? Can I ask you a question? How much of the Bible have you read?
A fair bit of it.
Okay, tell me just a little bit of what you have read.
Read a couple different of the books.
What?
I've read most of the Gospels.
Well, which ones?
What's the question here?
You hear me? Which gospel?
Okay, we're the ones controlling the discussion here, okay? We have questions for you. You can't come on this show and just start quizzing us, you know, somewhat rudely, I may add. Just when, you know, if you have a question for us, if you have something that you want to know, that's fine. But just asking our credentials isn't really getting to the point.
Hey, you claim you have read parts of the Bible. I'm asking you a simple question.
Yes, and I said
Can you
I've read
answer
some of
that
the books
then?
and some
Well,
and most of the
answer it.
Gospels. Is there a
Answer.
point to the question?
You said that you don't believe we came from monkeys.
Yeah.
Then you say we do.
When did I say we do?
Think about what
We're
you
getting
said.
on, we're getting on little
Yeah,
semantic
okay.
things here.
Yeah, we're getting on a bit too much. That was kind of a waste of airtime. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway,
Shall we do a quick clarification?
Okay.
You know,
Go for it.
evolution says that all primates have a common ancestor many million years ago, and there's this branching tree of life, and we're off in one branch somewhere, and you know, chimpanzees are off in another branch, and there are other branches that have died off, and so on. And so yes, we have a common primate ancestor. You know, we didn't descend from the monkeys. You know, for one thing, you know, the monkeys are here now, and they didn't necessarily exist back then. So,
Life that was around when we split off, I think the current number is around 7 million years, give or take.
right, right.
Life was pretty different back then. We wouldn't recognize a lot of things that we have now, and so.
And we have
things have changed.
this very cool thing that we have this genome, you know, our DNA, and we can take a look at the genome of our species and other species, and we can take a look at how much they overlap and how much they differ, and what mutations have occurred. And over time, we can start to fill in this tree and figure out exactly how the genome changed all the way down. And it's going to take a while. It's a gigantic puzzle being solved, and we're just to the point of now being able to do this genomes for various animals relatively efficiently. And we're going to learn an incredible amount. And you know, that's basically evidence you can't ignore and can't throw away.
Okay. All right. Again, this is a live call-in show. Phone number is on your screen. Go ahead and give us a call if you've got any questions. We have got Paul. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
Great. Well, basically, my question is in terms of the promotion of atheism. I guess what I really don't understand is the point and why. I guess given the we don't know scenario, why isn't agnosticism more of a logical conclusion to draw?
First, to get the definitions out of the way, atheism versus agnosticism. Gnosticism and agnosticism refer to what you know. Gnostic means that you know. Agnostic, you don't know for sure.
Right.
Theism, lack of belief in God, or atheism, lack of belief. Theism, belief. Most people on Earth are agnostics by those definitions, which are the most commonly accepted. I am an agnostic atheist. I can't prove it. I don't know it for sure, but I've yet to see any evidence, so I don't believe in God. Most people will admit that they can't prove God exists. They don't know it for sure, but they think he does. They believe that he does, so they are agnostic theists. And then you've got Jerry Falwell, who claims to be a Gnostic theist, and then you've got really hard atheists who say that they're Gnostic atheists. But most people are agnostic, either theists or atheists. Now, why we have a show on this, specifically harping more on the atheism side of it, partly it's just to get the word out. Atheism has a bad rap to it, and we're trying to fix that. Atheism typically is old and curmudgeonly men who, really can't stand anybody, and all this sucks. That's not really what it's all about.
We have those too,
So, yeah, we've got a couple, I'll admit it, but it's certainly not the vast majority of us. So we're trying to put a positive note on it.
right. And I guess it's better. It might be better to have a show about the minority opinion and what's good and bad about it, right? As Ashley said, agnosticism really is a very wide group of people. A lot of people really don't know. I mean, if somebody has evidence of God, by all means, bring it out into the open and let's share it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, you guys don't have horns, so I guess, we're doing good.
Yeah, we keep them shaved down pretty well.
Can I ask one follow-up question,
Sure,
and I'll let
sure.
you go? For years and years, there was an acronym drilled into my head in religious education called MAPS, which was kind of the proof text for, at least substantiating the Christian God. And basically it said you had manuscript evidence, archaeological evidence, scientific validation, and prophecy. And those four things put together were supposed to be your proof text for, validating the existence of God.
Okay.
Have you heard of that, and can you maybe comment?
Actually, no. That's the first that I've heard of something like that. I mean, I can understand the points behind it, but I haven't heard of that acronym before. Most of the things I hear in there, prophecy for one. Most of the prophecy in the Bible is very, very vague. A great pestilence will come across the land and so many people will die. That's happened millions of times on Earth. It doesn't prophesy anything if you can't nail it down and say, okay, it was talking about this one versus the one that happened 5 years ago. They're usually really vague. In terms of archaeology, well, some of the things in the Bible either were based on actual events or they could have actually happened.
So we're not debating that.
Exactly. So places mentioned in the Bible, a lot of them actually existed. No argument there. But then again, Alice in Wonderland talks about England, which also exists. Doesn't mean that you can prove that Alice in Wonderland and there's actually rabbit holes and Queen of Hearts and such. So picking it apart, each individual one, you can't point to any particular one that gives any evidence. And even in the whole, it doesn't really point to anything specific. There are better explanations out there.
Well, thank you very much. Very articulate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up, MAPS.
Yes, it's amazing to
do
me
it
after being an atheist for so many years, not a huge number of years, that
yeah.
I mean, hearing such a systematic thing that's supposed to bolster the theist viewpoint. We're very much for these sort of systematic sorts of things and building evidence and such. So I'm actually surprised I hadn't heard of such a thing.
And actually, for the manuscripts, we have the Bible, and that's really about it. There is very little.
There are a lot of frauds out there.
If any, texts outside of the Bible which actually back it up. So, so anyway, manuscripts, archaeology, prophecy, and
science. I think you said.
Scientific validation. Yeah, that's right. So have to look that one up. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, live call-in show. Phone numbers on your screen. Go ahead and give us a call. We have got. Let's see. Wes, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, pretty good.
Hey, actually, I kind of had the same question as the last caller about the agnostic versus atheist.
Okay.
And your answer was a little bit vague in that it sounds like you're really agnostic, but you're just taking the name atheist to get the word out. Is that inaccurate?
There's a common misunderstanding about what the word atheist means.
And agnostic, for that matter.
And agnostic, for that matter.
Gnosticism is simply, again, your knowledge of, I don't know for a fact, I cannot prove scientifically or in any other way that God does not exist.
Right.
But I choose not to believe. I don't believe that there's any, given most common standard definitions of God, I don't believe it exists. Most people going to church today would believe in a God, so they're theists, but they can't prove it. And they know that, they accept that. They can't prove it, they don't have any evidence, they don't know for a fact, but they choose to believe. So
we're not out there saying that we believe there is no God, or we are asserting there is no God. That would be a belief in and of itself. So, in effect, the atheist position is a very skeptical position.
I see. Well, I appreciate the time, and I'm glad you guys are actually on TV. And I kind of feel sorry for you having to deal with that caller a couple of.
It's fun.
We get a perverse sort of amusement by it sometimes. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit self-defeating to argue that God exists because there's the Bible and it says He exists. So.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks a lot for calling. Yeah, everyone on all sides has bad arguments out there.
Yep. I've heard some real bad ones for atheism.
Exactly.
Well.
I've talked to some atheists, and they just have a really bad ideas and bad arguments. And then, obviously, we talk to Christians every week who also have pretty bad arguments. Anyway, we can go on to, let's see, Tracy, how you doing?
Is it me?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, okay. I had one point that I was going to make about the gentleman that called about reason, the very first caller, and he was saying, well, how do you make an argument for reason without being, circular? Mm-hmm. My response is, let's just look at examples. I mean, live your life one day and do everything you can to be unreasonable. Take out the brakes on your car and go
if
driving.
you last that long.
Don't go to your work that day because you just don't feel like it. Jump off a 3-story building. Let's just do everything unreasonable and see how my life goes when I work on unreason versus reason.
That's a beautiful answer. I like that.
Yeah, and the other thing was the guy was calling and asking you how much of the Bible you'd read and evolution.
Yeah.
My response to that is, I've read enough of the Bible to know that your theory is mud and magic is where I came from. And so, I don't consider that a whole lot better. Even if evolution said we came from a monkey, how could that be worse?
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to say is the people that are calling in and saying, well, if you can't know, then shouldn't everybody be agnostic? My response to that is, I have no reason to think that just because I can't prove a thing, I can't say that I don't believe it's true or untrue, like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I can't disprove Santa Claus, but I think it's ridiculous for somebody to say, well, then you shouldn't be able to say that he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy.
Absolutely.
I can make up anything and then say, well, you have to respect it and say that it can't be known or unknown because I just imagined it.
Yeah.
And that's not a reasonable thing. People don't do that in the rest of their lives. I don't know why they do it when it comes to God.
Yeah, I think they had the argument a while back. Somebody said, I have a dragon in my garage.
Yeah, Carl Sagan.
Yeah, exactly. And, I don't see him. Well, he's invisible.
Yeah, veridically worthless, he called it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is.
He could escape any possible test you can come up with, which is what God does. So.
Well, what I like about that is when Sagan says it's veridically worthless, it puts it it really just lays it down. It says, look, if you can't prove it, I have no reason to believe it, so be quiet about it until you can show me.
Exactly.
Show me, don't tell me. When Galileo had his theories about, interplanetary system movement, he didn't sit around saying, well, I just believe this. He went to work and he tried to prove it because he knew a lot of people didn't believe it.
Yeah,
so he was like, hey, I believe this.
Gathered lots of evidence, that's right.
Right, and so he went to work trying to show other people that you could pin this down and you could see it. If God exists, right, when something exists, that means it's manifest.
Exactly.
If this thing is manifest, then we should be able to get a good grip on it. It shouldn't be this amorphous moving thing that you can't put on the table for me.
Exactly.
So don't ask me or don't ask anybody to believe something when you're saying it exists, but you can't put it on the table.
Yeah.
You don't accept that from, Christians don't accept it from anybody else. Why should we accept it from them?
Exactly.
Anyway, I'm fired up.
Oh, you just make my heart beat. I love it, Tracy. Come to our meetings, man. We want to
You know what? I keep wanting to, and I actually do a little cartoon that I want to send to your newsletter. I do like a little atheist cartoon. I call her Atheist Eve. And one of the cartoons that I did was actually just like the call with the evolution guy. It was Eve arguing with a Christian about evolution, and at the end she asked the Christian, well, where do you think we come from? And the little Christian says, I think we come from mud and magic. And Eve goes, you're serious, aren't you? And that's the end of the strip. But I mean, it's just, I just think it's so funny sometimes the arguments that they have that I just felt like it needed to be in a comic strip. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, with evolution, they've invested a huge amount of effort to try to tear it down. And if they, spent 1/10 the effort on looking at the Bible critically,
right? Yeah, is your mud magic theory really that much better? Even if evolution fell tomorrow, even if something happened and they said, the whole theory's gone to pot and we have no theories about where people came from, I still don't buy mud and magic.
Exactly, which is what they're counting on. They want to find the one magic bullet that demolishes evolution.
But
and then they're
assuming
that you'll be able to take God and just fill it in its place and, ha, we win.
Yeah, like
no, you don't.
God is going to make sense just because the prevailing anti-theory doesn't.
Exactly. Even if we find something that disproves evolution completely, creationism is still going to have to stand on its own merits.
Right,
it doesn't do that now, it's not going to do it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, you go, guys. Just keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for calling. Bye.
Boy, that warms my heart.
I know, it does me good. Anyway, to Tracy and any other people watching the show, we do have weekly meetings every Sunday at Crescent City Beignets. It's on 1211 West 6th Street, a couple blocks west of Lamar. We meet there around 11:30, and like I said, it's a very informal meeting. Typically, there's been around about a dozen, maybe 20 people or so down there. On the average meeting, so definitely if anyone wants to come down and meet us, atheist-friendly people, come on down.
Before you go to the next caller, I have, we get, if anybody has email, they get these little emails from various folks, and there's one floating around called the Nigerian scam. That there's so many different variations that they've kind of been lumped together, and it's this idea that somebody from some foreign country is writing you, and they have this horrible problem that they got this huge amount of money and they need to move it around, and they found you, and you're going to help them out, and they're going to transfer the money to your account, and then you get your cut, and they get their cut, and it solves this horrible problem that they have, and you end up making $1 million in the process, and you just look at this thing, and it seems like all they want is your letterhead of all things, but it's a slippery slope to getting your bank account, and just if you have your credibility detector turned on, you know that it's a scam.
Yeah, the funny one I got actually was one of those, one that my spam filter didn't catch. It was so steeped in religion, saying that the guy who had been ministering for his entire life and collected all his money, and now he wanted to give it to a good, wholesome, church-going kind of folk, so that they could do the Lord's work with it. And it's like, dude, why are you saying it to the host of the Atheist Experience then?
Yeah, there are variations that prey on religious groups, and that's sad too. Yeah. But you take a look at it, and your detector goes off that says, here I am. If it's too good to be true, then it probably is. Yeah. And you can apply the same thing to religion. If all I have to do is believe and I get this infinite reward, then something's probably wrong.
Speaking of email, not that anybody should forward Nigerian scams to us. We do have an email address for the show, though. If you have any questions or comments, something you think of during the week, our email address for the show is tv@atheist-community.org. If you don't get on today, please go ahead and write us, and we'll go ahead and respond to any letters there and possibly bring them on the air. Anyway, we have got couple more callers lined up. I believe. Sorry, the ordering was a bit out of whack.
I think number 3 is next, but
we'll go with sure. Why not? Spencer, how you doing?
Fag bashers unite! Fag.
Well, that cuts out line 3. Let's see. Go with Fred. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. What you got for us?
Well, I think Tracy to me sounded to have views that are a lot more reasonable than either of you two.
She might be. Yeah, we could probably learn a few things from her.
Given that the church position is that knowledge of God comes to you through faith, and that God is not subject to science, and faith itself is a form of knowledge, not subject to science.
Well, faith is not a form of knowledge, though.
Well, let me just finish, and then you can say that. And if you guys are so self-reliant on your senses and your reasoning, where does your senses and your reasoning allow for you to posit the possibility of a thing called faith and a thing called God, which are not subject to senses? It seems to me that you guys are really a little bit weak or a little bit not really relying on your senses as much as you say you are. I mean, there is no God. I mean, what keeps you from what in your sense data and reasoning allows you to accept the possibility of things which can't be subject to senses or reasoning?
I think, and I'm going to kind of put this out there and see what you think of it. I haven't seen any really good evidence for the existence of a God. We have better explanations of how life got in here and how life changes the way it does, how the universe works, all these different things. We have better explanations than God. And so since we have a better explanation, I'll go with those over the idea that it's just some all-powerful, invisible man who can do it. I don't see any evidence, therefore I don't believe. Does that kind of answer? Or?
No, but you don't take it far enough. If you say that you're relying on senses and science and your reasoning to explain these things over God, which is, according to the Catholic Church and others, is not subject to any kind of scientific discovery, and faith is not subject to any kind of scientific discovery, and yet you say you're relying on your senses and your reasoning and science, but you postulate the possibility of a God. Now, where in the world does your senses, science, and reasoning allow you to postulate a possibility?
We're responding to the theist.
Allows you to postulate the possibility of something that contradicts your reasoning senses. I mean, I don't know why you just don't say there is no God like the last caller can say.
Okay, because there could be evidence which comes out tomorrow which says otherwise. It's also important to note
but remember, the definition by the Catholic Church and others is that God is a concept not subject to science, and therefore there will never be any evidence.
Okay. If there's never any evidence and he never interacts with the world, then it's a worthless idea.
By definition, it's not a worthless idea because if you have this thing called faith, you'll accept it. But again, faith is, again, something that cannot be subject to science.
Yeah.
So I don't see the problem. In fact, I think you're weakening your own self-confidence by not saying there is no God.
Yeah. You don't need to go that far. Saying you don't believe because there's no evidence or not enough evidence is a strong enough position that can't really be easily refuted. If I say that there is no God, someone can come up with a different definition of God.
Well, it's a positive statement. It's an assertion about the world that we would need to prove. We would need to provide evidence.
We're then making the assertion that this item does not exist.
Santa Claus, you don't have to prove that. People can come up with, people can create
and logically,
thousands of fictional things.
And logically, you can argue with them.
And your senses are good enough for you to say that those are fiction, they're not real.
Mm-hmm. And the only reason you can get away with saying Santa doesn't exist, period, is because nobody, past the age of 5, believes that he does. Right. If there were somebody, if you say that Santa does not exist, you are making a statement which logically you have to back up. I could come at you and argue and say, well, I know he exists. You're making this claim that he doesn't exist. Prove it. That's not possible. You can't disprove the existence of God or Santa Claus.
Well, I think the big thing here is that there are lots of Christians in the world, and there are lots of Christians in the United States, and they do have this belief, and so we're responding to that by and large.
Most of the world it follows the Catholic Church, which clearly says that God and faith are not subject to science or scientific discovery. Therefore, your son's data should say there is no God.
Well, if God interacts with the physical world, then there is something that we can reason about and deal with in a scientific basis. If God never touches the world, then it's sort of a moot point. It's irrelevant to us, right?
It only touches the souls of people through their faith.
Well, we don't believe in souls, so therefore,
no souls,
meaningless. So anyway, we're going to have to let you go. We've only got a couple seconds left in the show.
Thank you for your call.
Thanks a lot for calling. And again, anyone else who's out there who didn't get on the air, we do have a couple callers left.
We're sorry. We ran out of time.
But TV at atheist-community.org. You can go ahead and write us there, and we will respond to any letters. Also, Crescent City Beignets every Sunday at 11:30 in the morning. We all meet down there and have some good old fun, and it's a very informal meeting. Come down, meet us sometime, and tell us, let us know what you got. Anyway, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.